भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। समस्त जनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। ॐ श्री चिन्मय सद्गुरवे नमः। योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पातञ्जलि प्राञ्जलिना नतोऽस्मि। हरि ओम। We are studying the Vibhuti Pada, the third adhyaya, third pada of Patanjali Yoga Sutra. We are trying to see how, by doing sanyama, dhyana, dharana, samadhi together on any object or any aspect of creation, how the yogi can master the intricate mystical structure and function of the things that are normally not known to ordinary intellect. We have seen that Surya Sanyamat Bhuvana Jnanam, by focusing on the sun, by doing the concentration or the Sanyama on the Surya, the yogi is able to ascertain, visualize, and experience Chaturdasha Sthanam, Chaturdasha Bhuvanam, the 7 Urdho Bhuvanam, the 7 Adho Bhuvanam, all the Swargas, all the Patalas, and the inhabitants of those places. Similarly, the creation being a very vast universe, the yogi may decide to contemplate upon the moon. When Chandrama, moon, is the object of Sanyama, the meditation or the full concentration on the moon, the yogi's consciousness, which is reflected through the buddhi, enters into a different realm, the realm of Antariksha. The yogi ascends into Antariksha, and as if he is overseeing the whole universe, he is able to see all the stars. The stars are seen at distant places. The blazing white stars, the neutron stars, the dwarfs, the black holes, the galaxies, humongous amount of galaxies colliding with each other, creating huge force of gravitational attraction as well as repulsive force in certain cases. The brightness of the stars, which can actually put even the sun to the shame, that kind of brightness is also seen, perceived by the yogi, by his antarchakshu, by sheer help of the buddhi tattva, which has now ascended at a much higher level, taking the consciousness into the higher realms. The yogi comes to know which planet, which star, which satellite of the star is situated where. The yogi can do what is called as an astral travel. He is able to see the Saturn, the Jupiter, the Pluto, the movements there, the winds that are blowing at alarming speed on the surface of Jupiter as well as Saturn, the cold vapors on the Saturn, which are full and rich in sodium, as well as the methane gas, everything which otherwise is deduced by calculation by the astrologists, astronomers, is now seen, perceived by the yogi, sitting at one place, maybe under a tree, but doing what is called as sanyama, or the concentration on the moon. Mind well, moon is the object of concentration, while what is perceived, what is received as a knowledge, is the knowledge of entire universe as far as its anatomical structure is concerned. All the stars and planets are seen as stationary objects. No knowledge about the relational, rotational velocities of these planets and their orbits is obtained by this particular thing. So, Chandre Tara Vyuhadnyanam. Vyuhadnyanam meaning how the stars are placed in relation to each other. However, in order to know how the stars move in relationship to each other, how they orbit in relation to each other, which are the elliptical orbits, which are the circular orbits, how much time a planet requires to orbit around another planet, how much time a satellite requires to orbit around the main planet of whom these satellites are. This knowledge requires a different concentration, which is called Dhruve Tadgati Jnanam. Dhruve meaning, in order to know the relational velocities of all the planets and their orbits and their velocities, their speed, their inclination of the orbits, for that, focusing on moon is not enough. For that, the focus or the sanyama has to be, the meditation has to be on Dhruvatara or the pole star. Pole star is a relatively fixed star which doesn't apparently move, although the modern astronomy tells us that it does move about 2 inches in 10,000 years, but relatively being stable in the sky. The yogi does sanyam on that pole star or Dhruvatara and comes to know about the relational velocities of all the galaxies, the stars, the planets, and whatnot. That is how a yogi, in about a span of an hour or so, sitting somewhere in the remote corner in the universe, on the earth, comes to know about the humongous knowledge of all these areas. Then comes the next Siddhi, which is the 13th Siddhi or the Vibhuti. It is called Nabhi Chakre Kaya Vyuhadnyanam. Nabhi Chakre, the yogi, instead of now focusing on the moon or the pole star, if he decides to do the Sanyama on his own Nabhi Chakra, there is a chakra existing at the navel level. One needs to understand very clearly that the chakras described in Kundalini Shastra are different than the chakras that are described in Patanjali Yoga Sutra. That is the. So we have Nabhi Chakre Kaya Vyuhadnyanam, meaning the yogi sits in meditation and does his sanyama, the focus, the meditation through dhyana dharana samadhi on the chakra which is existing at navel level. Some of the people say this Nabhi chakra is nothing else but Manipura chakra. So By focusing on this Manipur chakra or the Nabhi chakra, the yogi comes to know about the anatomy of the body. The whole body is laid bare open to the yogi. He is able to see how the blood is moving, how the muscles are there inside, how the semen is working, how the digestive tract is working, how the central nervous system is working, the neurons, the nerve cells, the muscle cells, the skin cells, the bone cells, everything inside is seen or perceived at the time of meditation on the Nabhi chakra. So that is how the Ayurveda Shastra is the Shastra which hasn't been developed by trial and error. The modern medicine does lots of surveys, statistical modeling by doing the patients. They do a research on the number of patients against a placebo effect and come to certain conclusions about the effects of medicine on the patient, whether it is useful or not. That is the method of modern medicine called allopathic medicine. In case of Ayurvedic medicine, most of the Ayurveda Acharya, and I'm talking of the genuine ones, those who were yogi in the first place, who had seen the anatomy of the body, they were able to see the effect of anything that is taken by mouth, the ingested by mouth, because they were able to visualize the entire body from within. And then that is how the body is made up of sapta dhatu, the tvacha, rakta, maus, snayu, majja, that is nerves, asthi, and the virya. If you go from outside to inside, the outermost is tvacha, inside that is rakta, inside that is maus, that is this tissue, inside that is snayu, which is muscle, inside that is nerves, inside the nerves is bone, inside the bone is virya, or the semen, or the ojas. So these sapta dhatus are lined one inside the other in a serial manner, and that is how the whole body is made. Since the yogi is able to focus or do what is called as the Sanyama on the Nabhi chakra, he is not only able to see these sapta dhatus, but he is also able to see disturbances in these sapta dhatus and the three doshas, the vata, pitta, kapha, the effect of these sapta dhatu disturbances, and is able to know that this substance causes this disturbance. That is how Ayurveda Shastra has evolved. So it is not that some muli or some herb was given and then somebody waited for the experiment to happen, what happens to the patient, and then note it down. It was the yoga jnanam. That being the reason, Ayurveda's origin lies in the higher understanding by the rishis, who could understood the entire activity, the anatomy and the physiological part of Kaya Vyuha. So this is the 13th Siddhi, that, or the Vibhuti, that the yogi gets by doing Sanyama on the Nabhi chakra. Similarly, there is another area where the Sanyama can be made and a dramatic result can be obtained. The next Siddhi, or the 14th Siddhi, is called Kantha Kupe Kshut Pipasa Nivrutti. Kantha Kupe, by focusing or by meditating or by doing Sanyama on the Kantha Kup. Kantha Kup means well in the neck. Right here where I'm pointing my finger, just below the Adam's apple and just above the sternum, there is a depression which you see here. This depression is called Kantha Kupa, a small well right at the neck, Kantha Kupe. If the Sanyama is done at this point, some people say it is inside in the throat, but the area is still the same. The area that lies below the Adam's apple, just above the sternum, which is a slight depression, is called Kantha Kupa. The yogi sits in his position. in Sthira Sukhasanam, and when he does the concentration or the meditation on this Kanthakupa, then what happens? Kshat Pipasa Nivrutti. He neither feels hungry nor he feels thirsty. Because he doesn't feel hungry and because he doesn't feel thirsty, the kidneys and the gastrointestinal tract, they stop working. They remain only in idle condition. So there is no motion, there is no urination, there is no hunger, and there is no thirst for a yogi. Now, this apparently appears to be quite a difficult thing to believe, but there are examples. One of the prominent yogis, and there are many yogis who have attended this Siddhi. One of the prominent one was Pavahari Baba. Pavahari Baba was the gentleman sadhu who was the sadhu about whom Swami Vivekananda was extremely impressed. This Pavahari Baba used to do his sadhana by digging a almost 9 to 12 feet down in the ground. And he used to go inside the ground and lie down in the tube or in that particular, the trench that he had created for himself, and used to be in samadhi for a couple of months. During that period, there was no hunger, there was no thirst. And that is how in his later life also at Ghazipur, where he met Swami Vivekananda, he was enclosed into a small hut. One of the reasons why he had enclosed himself inside the walled hut was because he was a Bala Brahmachari. Being a Naishthika Bala Brahmachari, he could not allow the shadow of any person fall on him. That being the reason, he was always away from people. So he was staying inside a hut, but the hut was completely covered or enclosed from outside by a wall. So people used to communicate from outside through the wall with him, including Swami Vivekananda. On one or two rare occasions, Vivekananda could see him or meet him in person. So all these days, there people used to put a lot of food outside the hut, presuming that one day Baba will come, take the food and eat it. But many, many days they could see that the food used to lie outside without being touched. And that is how his name was kept by people as Pavahari, Pavan Ahari Baba, the one who eats only air for hunger. Pavahari Baba. So that is how Kanthakupa is the place where there is a sangharsha of pranas. The pranas are in sangharsha here. That is why whenever we are thirsty, we say, I have a parched throat. Pyas lagi hai. I'm very thirsty and my throat is getting parched. Throat, because that's the pharyngeal level. Kanthakupa. That is where there is a prana sangharsha. That is the place where the appetite and the thirst is focused. So that is why Kanthakupe Kshat Pipasa Nivrutti is another siddhi that the yogi exhibits. He uses this particular siddhi for his own purpose. And the own purpose is basically to remain in meditation for the higher realms to be achieved. The yogi is not interested in the world. The yogi is not interested even in the bodily activities, because he wants to ascend higher and higher till the Purusha Khyati, Purusha Darshanam happens, Atmanubhuti happens. That being the end, that being the Kaivalya, that being the Moksha Dhama. He is more interested in that, and that is the reason the Siddhis are sometimes utilized for the sake of advancement of the Samadhi status. The 15th Siddhi that comes after this is called Kurma Nadya Sthiryam. There are many nadis in the body. The concept of Nath Tattvajnana as well as Tantricism, it tells us that the body has main Pancha Pranas, Mukhya Pranas and Pancha Upapranas. We all know there are 10 Pranas. Prana is not to be considered as breath. There is a more normal misconception in our mind that prana is breath. No, prana is not breath. Breath carries the prana. Prana is the essence of energy which rides on the breath and spreads all over. So chalana valana or vahana of prana happens because of breathing, but breathing is not prana. But by regulating the breathing, you naturally regulate the prana. These prana, when it is in main pancha pranas, we all know vyana, apan, udana, saman, all these are basically the energy that we take from outside. The God has made this outside world full of prana. The energy is everywhere. We as human beings and all the animals are able to draw in the energy from the environment, from the things outside, through the breathing inside our body. And that is the prana that sustains our body by being present in every single cell of the body. These pranas have specified functions. For example, the Panavayu has a function of downward propelment. So that is why all downward propelments, whether it is virya skalana or whether it is the motion or whether it is the urination, all that happens because of the apana vayu. So each vayu has been given a specified function. Prana being one of the vayu which is given the function of the lungs and the breathing. That is why prana utkramana, pranutkamana is a stopping of the lungs because the prana is no more working there. So in the similar manner, these pranas, when they create the energy, they are distributed to each and every cell through a channel called nadi. These are nada, Sataishcha Eke. In Kathopanishad, it says 101 nadis are there. But if you look at the Nath Sampradaya Sahitya, in Kashmir Shaivism or Nath Shaivism, we find the nadis to be 76,000. Now, there are many, many nadis, but the main nadis are, of course, Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna, as we all know. Amongst these nadis, there is one nadi, one channel of energy, which is situated behind the chest, behind the sternum, right at the place where I'm keeping my hand. This is the place where there is a kurma nadi. Kurma means like a tortoise. This nadi is in the shape of a tortoise, placed right behind the chest. Now, this is visualized by yogis. We can't see it in an ordinary sense. But a yogi, because he is now advanced, he has a nadhi, kaya vyuhadnyanam, he is able to see the nadis. And when he sees the kurma nadi, or the nadi in the shape of tortoise behind the sternum or behind the chest, if he does sayama or the meditation on that, then what happens? He gets what is called sthairyam. What is the sthairyam? Sthairyam means he becomes absolutely solidly entrenched in the place where he is. If the yogi focuses on the kurmanadi, and if any power in the world wants to push the yogi or pull the yogi, he will not move. Because of his immense meditation on kurmanadi, there is no movement possible for him as long as he decides not to move. We see in the Puranas, the Bhima, who was very, very arrogant about the power that he possessed. Bhima was extremely powerful Pandava. When he got a little bit waylaid by the arrogance of his power, he came across the story. We have all of us, we have heard that story. He came across the old monkey on the way. And arrogant Bhima asked the monkey to move away. And the monkey said, "Look, sir, I am very old. Can you just put my tail, which is coming in your way, away from here?" And Bhima then thought that, a small tail of a monkey, how much time will it take for me to move? So he went to move the tail, but he could not even lift the tail of the monkey. All his power was useless because Hanumana, being the highest yogi, he was able to do the Kurmanadya Sthairiam Siddhi. So the stability, the powerful stabilization is possible by Kurmanadya Sthiti. It is considered or it is described in the Bhashyam as like the Sarpa. Many a time the snake sticks to the place where it is, or the Godha Jantu, the monitor lizard. In the days, olden days, not very old, in the medieval days, in the days of Shivaji and others, when they used to go on the fort, they used to use what is called as ghorpad or monitor lizard. They used to tie a thread, try a rope, and send the lizard up there in the fort, and all the people could climb on that rope, but because the grip of that particular lizard on the stone is so strong that even if all the people are hanging on the rope, the animal will not leave the grip. That particular animal in Sanskrit is called Godha Jantu. We call it monitor lizard, or it is also called as Ghorpad in Marathi. Something similar to that, the grip comes to the yogi, which is called Kurmanadya Sthairyam. So this is another siddhi which the yogi may or may not use. Again, the yogi, when he focuses on the top of the skull. Now, when we say top of the skull, we are not talking about the hair side. Inside the skull, there is a luminous object which you and me cannot see, but yogi is privy to that object. When the yogi decides to do sanyama on the murdha jyotishi, the illuminating part inside the skull, by focusing on that, he gets a siddhi called Siddha Darshanam. Murdha Jyotishi Siddha Darshanam. Murdha means Shire Kapale Antascha Chidraha. There is a hole here called Brahmarandra. Now, this is anatomically not seen. It is there only when the child is very small. We all know that the ladies are used to putting oil here for the small baby, giving a massage here while giving the bath. This is a typical Indian tradition. That is because the bones are growing. When the bones are growing, the skull of the baby has only skin there between the brain and the outside. There's only skin. Right now, we have the bone between the brain and the outer world. The skin is only there when you are, and as you grow, as the baby grows, the plates of this bone, parietal, occipital, temple, they keep growing and the skull is formed. So they fuse and the skull is formed. But the Yoga Shastra believes that the hole still remains there, which is called Brahmarandra. Many a times the yogi takes the prana out from the Brahmarandra when he wants to abdicate the body. Right below the Brahmarandra, there is a luminous Jyotishmati, a luminous flame or luminous structure is there. When the yogi sits in asana and does sanyama on that, the result of that sanyama leads to a siddhi which is called as Siddha Darshanam. What is Siddha Darshanam? There are many, many siddhas still existing into Antariksha. In this world, we think that we are the only people who are inhabiting the earth. We are the biggest fools of higher order. There are many, many devas and siddhas that are existing in Antariksha. We are not able to access them simply because of the impure nature of ours. But a yogi, with his purity of heart and the ability to concentrate or do sanyama on the Murdha Jyotishi, he is able to see all the siddhas and he gets the Divya Purusha Darshanam. That is called as another siddhi. So thus, Sanyama on this particular Jyoti leads to the darshan of Divya Purush who stay in Dyava Prithivyoho Antarala Charinam, the space between the Prithvilok and the Antarlok. That is the space where you have siddhas normally doing the vicharana or viharana. So in that vihara, one is able to go and see the actual presence of the siddhas. It is called Siddha Darshanam. Then comes the next siddhi, which is called Pratibhadva sarvam. Pratibhadva. What is pratibha? Pratibha doesn't have a parallel word in English. A very loosely speaking, it is called intuition. Gurudeva in his commentaries, whether it is Candlelight or Bhagavad Gita or any Upanishad, he uses the word intuitive knowledge or intuition again and again. By that particular word, he is hinting at this word in Sanskrit called pratibha. Pratibha is roughly translated as intuition, but it is much more than that. The difference between pratibha and normal buddhi is we all are privy to knowledge. We see a particular object. Supposing that we see a pen, we come to know about the pen. How is the process of knowing this particular pen? The object has to be there. It has to be perceived by the eyes first as an indriya. It has to go to the brain. Then it has to compare with my previous experiences of such a long thing and which is used for writing. And then that smriti is brought back, then compared with this particular structure, and then it is called as pen. Now this pen which is there, this pen is known as pen simply because I went through a process of indriya gochara jnana. Indriya gochara jnana meaning the knowledge that is obtained by essentially intervention of the indriyas. Now, is it possible that you can get a knowledge of a particular thing without using the indriya? For example, I am not able to see what is happening in California. That means my indriya is incapable of reaching there. Since it is incapable of reaching, I have no knowledge about what is happening there in California. If it is a knowledge which does not use indriya, then if the mind is able to go and reach at a place without the help of indriyas and get the knowledge of that particular thing without the help of indriyas, such a knowledge is called pratibha jnana, and such a buddhi is called pratibha. This is called as pratibha jnana. Now, pratibha jnana means directly I get the knowledge of any object without sparsha, shabda, rupa, rasa, gandha, everything without involvement of panchendriyas. I shall not come to know what you are speaking, what you are thinking, unless you speak and I hear. I am speaking, you are hearing, and that is why you know what I am speaking. But if I decide to just keep quiet, you will not understand anything that is there in my mind, because my speech, your indriya of hearing called karna, has to come in use for you to get the knowledge. But imagine you are sitting, I am sitting, and we are not talking, and yet you are receiving the knowledge called pratibha jnana. Ramana Maharshi. Ramana Maharshi used to use pratibha jnana, for which he used to not only use the pratibha jnana because he was yogi par excellence, he used to inculcate that in the people who are sitting in front of him so that they could understand what he is thinking without he speaking, without they speaking. So this pratibha jnana is the jnanam which the yogi gets. So pratibhadva sarvam. Then what is the pratibha jnana? If this is the jnana, then can by pratibha jnana can I know Atman? Or can I have Purusha Khyati? No. That means there are 3 layers or levels of knowledge. The first level is called Indriya Gochara Jnana. Use the Indriya, get the Jnana, which we are all aware of, which we are accustomed to. That is our level of knowledge. Take a book in front of you of astronomy, astrophysics, engineering, chemical engineering, marketing, and then get the knowledge out of it with the help of reading and then using the mind as the ultimate analytical point. This is called Indriya Gochara Jnana. In case of Pratibha Jnana, the book is not there. The subject is not there in the form of any object. But directly you receive the knowledge of marketing and chemical engineering without reading it, because the mind directly reaches the knowledge point. But mind well, here again the mind as an indriya is definitely involved. So this is called pratibha jnana. The buddhi here is at a higher level, but still it is a buddhi, gochara jnana. That means the buddhi is involved, indriyas are not involved. The ultimate knowledge is called vivekaja jnana or yogaja jnana. In vivekaja jnanam, even the mind or the buddhi is not involved. It's very difficult for us to understand. Without the involvement of the buddhi, without the involvement of the indriyas, knowledge is there. How that is possible? That is possible when you are a jnana swarupa. Jnana swarupa means you exist. You don't have to really have indriya or mind to know that. You know you exist. From where this knowledge came? It is inherent in us that I exist. This is my body. How do I come to know? Every time I don't touch. I don't require indriya for that. I know I am. I know I am. From where this knowledge came? It came not because of the mind, not because of the indriya. It is a knowledge that is inherent in me as a concept. Are you existing? And you would laugh at it. You say, what do you mean by that? I do. What is the guarantee? You would say, what is the need of guarantee? I exist because I say so. I do exist. In fact, the one who is saying itself says that I am existing. So all these arguments we are putting because it is the self-awareness, knowing the knower. You don't have to know the knower. You are the knower. So there is no process of knowing the knower. Being a knower itself is to know. This is called vivekaja jnana. So pratibha jnana is like ushakala. In the bhashya that is made on this particular Siddhi, pratibhadva sarvam, is darkness is what our normal knowledge is. Why? Because we require indriya everywhere. We require light. In the darkness, we don't see anything. You throw a light and that much you come to know. Our knowledge is like that. You throw the indriya there and you come to know that much only. Right now, I am eating, so I will come to know about the swad. But that time, I don't know about theory of relativity. Why? I have to then sit at the study and start studying theory of relativity. When I'm studying theory of relativity, I don't have the knowledge of Upanishad. Why? Because I'm not studying Upanishad. When I'm studying Upanishad, I don't have knowledge of the beautiful fragrance of a flower. Why? Because the flower is not in front of my nose. That means our knowledge is indriya based. One, indriya is like a torch. So every time you throw the light through a torch, that much light, only that much area is illuminated and that much knowledge only comes to us. The entire knowledge doesn't come. As the yogi starts moving towards the sampradnyat samadhi, because of his expertise, the kaushalyam that he has on this sanyama, the knowledge starts expanding. And then what happens? From the tama or the andhakaramaya vishwa that we have at present, there comes ushakala. Ushakala is not Surya Arohana. The sun is yet to come. But ushakala, you see things. You start seeing the things. Suddenly the trees appear, the birds appear, the road appears, the lake appears, the mountain appears. Means what? Now you don't need a torch. You are able to see the things. They are not as clear as seeing it under the blazing sun, but they are just close to that. This is called pratibha. Completely groping in dark and using the torch of indriyas, that is called indriya gochara jnana. Pratibha. So pratibha jnanam is jnanam like an ushakala. Suddenly you start realizing everything in a better manner, though not as sharp and beautiful and completely clear as a blazing sun. That is called viveka khyati or vivekaja jnanam. So pratibha jnanam is between the indriya gochara jnanam and vivekaja jnanam. The indriya gochara jnanam requires an indriya. Pratibha jnanam requires only the mind or the buddhi, but not the indriyas. And Vivekaja Jnanam does not require anything because it is a Jnana Swarupa itself. So that is the Siddhi called Pratibhadva Sarvam. If we look at the Swami Vivekananda's Charitra, a crystal clear clarity about any subject in the world. How do you expect that Swami Vivekananda was given just to tease him, just to make him to belittle him? He was given a subject so funny to him, so foreign to him. The name of the subject was Impact on the International Market of Silver Prices. A sannyasi would never know what is a silver price. And certainly he would not know the impact of fluctuating silver prices on international market. And yet he spoke for about 1 hour on that subject. Similarly, on the other occasion, a Norwegian professor of history asked him a question, difficult question of Norwegian history. How do you expect an Indian sadhu who has traveled for the first time to US to know about the Norwegian history? But he did answer the question, and it was very difficult, yet he was able to answer it. This is called Pratibhadva Swaravam. When the dawn of Purusha Khyati comes, everything in this world is known to such people without studying the subject, because you don't have to throw the light through the indriyas. The things get lighted itself. When Ushakkala is there, everything is seen. You have to just see it. You don't have to do any other attempt to enlighten it. You don't have to make any attempt to throw light upon it, because the light is dawning from the top. This is called Pratibha Jnana. So Pratibha Jnana, but at the same time, Pratibha Jnana is not the Viveka Jnana. So that is why it is called Purva Bhasa or Purva Linga of Viveka Jnana. Viveka Jnana is the ultimate Jnanam, the Jnanam of Purusha or the Atman. Then comes the next Siddhi, which is called Hrudaye Chit Samveda. Hrudaye Chit Samveda. This is 16th, or this is called as 16th Siddhi. Now we all know that when you do Sanyama on Hrudaya, Hrudaya is the word used in many Upanishads as well as Indian Shastras. For God's sake, this is never to be equated to the heart, which is lying on the left side in anatomy of the modern medicine. That Hrudaya is different. And this Hrudaya, what they are calling, is different. In the Sharira, there is something called a Hrudaya Kasha. This Hrudaya Kasha, because it is the abode of Atman, the Sharira itself is called Brahmapura. Brahmapura means the place where Brahman resides or the Atman resides. In this Brahmapura or the Sharira, Daharama Pundarika Vesha. Daharam means small. Pundarika means lotus-like abode. Veshya means compounded, the one which is contained, the one which is covered. So there is a place called Hrudaya Akash, which lies mostly on the right side, near the heart level, which is a small in structure, like a lotus, covered by a boundary. And this is the one which is seen by only the yogis. Hridayastha Angushta Matra Purusha. In Hatha Yoga, we see it is called as Angushta Matra Purusha. Similarly, in Kathopanishada, it is referred as Angushta Matra Purusha. Angushta Matra Purusha meaning the small flame, which is Hridayastha. This is seen by the yogic eyes when he is in the meditation phase at a higher level. Because what we see when our eyes are open is the normal world. There are different worlds that are privy to us. Only the yogi reaches higher and higher consciousness level. He sees new and new things. Similarly, in the body at the Hridaya Akashastha, he sees this particular Jyoti, and he does this particular Jyoti when he focuses on that, then there is a Sanyama on that. When he does Sanyama on that, then what happens is all the chakras, and what are the chakras? So far we have seen Nabhi Chakra, Kantha Kupa, Kurma Nadya, Murdha Jyoti, and Hridaya. These are the 5 chakras, which are the anatomical things that are seen by the yogi in the Sanyama. And based on these chakras only, later on the Hatha Yoga developed the Sapta chakras or the Shad chakras as they call it, which are nothing else but the Muladhara, the Manipur, the Anahata, the Vishuddhi chakra, the Ajna chakra, and the Sahasrara chakra. These are all imaginary chakras seen at a particular level by the yogi, but all of them have derived this thing from the Pancha Chakras or the Pancha Sthanam, which are described by Patanjali Yoga Sutra. This is as far as the yoga's Siddhi in Sanyama of the Hridaya is concerned. Now what happens is, when the yogi starts focusing or doing meditation on this Hridaya, he comes to the next stage, which is the 18th Siddhi, and that is called Sattva Purushoyar Atyanta Sankirnayo Asankirnayo Pratyaya Vishesho Bhogaha Pararthatvat Swartha Sanyamat Purusha Jnanam. This is one of the very, very, very important Siddhi. Also very, very, very important explanation about a very fundamental aspect. We all have been listening in Advaita about Atma Anubhuti or Atma Darshanam. We all know that Atma Darshanam is the ultimate aim or the goal of a Jnana Yogi, Sankhya Yogi, Yogi, Bhakta, everyone. We all know that Atman is the most nishkriya thing. Atma does nothing, creates nothing, not interested in anything, doesn't desire anything. It is a Shuddha, Buddha, Nitya, Mukta. This is how we have all heard about it. Now the question is, if Purusha Khyati, that means there has to be a darshanam of Atman or Purusha, is it a process where we actually see Atman as an object? So far in our world, everything that is perceived as an object. We call pen a pen because we perceive pen as an object. We call ball a ball because we perceive ball as an object. So that means every knowledge that we have, we always have that substance whose knowledge we are getting as separate from us. Now, we are ourselves Atman, so we cannot be separate from Atman. And if the thing is not separate from us, how can we see that? To see a thing, separation is must. And if the separation is not there, then we cannot see it. If this is the case, then how is it that the experience of Atma Darshanam comes? Those Jivan Mukta who had Atma Anubhuti, like Gurudeva, they have never said that, look, that particular morning I was sitting in meditation and I saw Atman. They don't say that. They don't, in fact, they don't speak of seeing Atman. They don't, no one single gentleman, no one single sadhu has ever said that I have Atma Darshanam. And yet they have Atma Darshanam. What is the mystery behind it? Who gets this Atma Darshanam? And Kenopanishad is replete with the statement that if you say you have had Atma Darshanam, you haven't had it. If you say I don't have it, you have it. What is this mystery that they are talking about? Purusha Khyati or Atma Darshanam is by Buddhi or not? Buddhi itself is Jada. If Buddhi is a reflecting medium, Buddhi is a Jada, Buddhi is a Shuddha Sattva Guna, and that is Triguna Atita, that is beyond buddhi, then how buddhi can grapple or grasp Atma Tattvam? It's a very, very fundamental question. Presently, whatever is given to me, the best amongst what is given to me as an instrument is buddhi. Everybody will agree with that. Buddhi is the finest instrument that is given to me by God. In fact, if I have to use the smallest, subtlest, sharpest, brightest thing to see God, it is buddhi. But buddhi itself is made up of Shuddha Sattva Guna. So yes, it is definitely superior to other organs or everything else. It is the seat of learning. Everything is fine. Buddhi is Nishchayatmaka Tattva. That is also fine. But the fact remains that it is Guna Yukta. A Guna Yukta cannot see Guna Vimukta. How the light can see darkness? Can darkness see light? Not possible, because when darkness goes to light, that means the light itself, the darkness cannot exist. So darkness and light cannot come together. So darkness cannot see light because the light, the nature of the light does not pre-exist in the darkness. So the nature of Atman being Prakasha, nature of Buddhi being Tama, like light and darkness, they are distinctly apart. Then comes the question, being in darkness, how will we see the light? If the instrument that is endowed with me by the God, even the best and the finest amongst them being Buddhi, Buddhi itself being Shuddha Sattva Guna, and that being Triguna Atita, how to reconcile this? At the height of meditation, Atmanubhuti is there or Purusha Khyati is there. But to whom? To Atma, Anubhuti cannot be there because it is Nishkriya. To Buddhi, it cannot be there because Buddhi itself is a Jada. The Jada cannot know Chaitanya. Then who gets Atma Darshanam? How it is possible that the Jada comes to know the Chaitanya Tattva? Chaitanya itself knows itself, so there is no question. Jada cannot know Chaitanya because it is Jada. So this Jada Chaitanya connection, how do we describe? And how is it that you cross over from this Jada to Chaitanya? And who crosses over? Who gets the Atma Darshanam? Because ultimately Darshanam itself means Buddhi. Because all that we know, knowing is the function of Buddhi. Atman cannot be known. And Buddhi cannot do anything other than knowing. How do we reconcile this? That is where this sutra becomes, or the 18th Siddhi becomes extremely important. The first important thing in that is Sattva Purushoyar Atyant Asankirnayo Pratyaya Vishesho Bhogaha Pararthatvat. First, we need to understand what is Bhoga. Bhoga is whenever the chitta or the antakaran comes in contact with any object or the sense object. Senses means indriyas. Sense objects mean the object that is touched by the senses or the indriyas. Whenever indriyas touch an object, the indriyas are jada, the object is a jada, the mind or the antakaran is jada. So all the jadas are coming together. Inactive elements are coming together. Now, inactive elements coming together will not make any sense unless an active element is involved into it, unless the Chaitanya is involved into it. So, when the senses contact the object, and this contact is brought as a signal to the Antakarana, the whole process is enlivened, activated by Chaitanya, by Purusha, by Atman. However, the way it is done is asankirna yoho. It is done almost as if Buddhi is functional, sense organ is functional, object is functional. I move my finger This movement is not possible without consciousness or Chaitanya. But the consciousness, when it is acting through my antakarna, through my buddhi, through my indriya to this particular finger, it is acting in unison, in collaboration, in absolute contact with each other in such a manner that I feel as if my finger moved. The finger didn't move. The consciousness moved the finger. But I say finger moved, or I say I moved the finger. Now I, that is ahankar, cannot move the finger because ahankar is antakarana, chitta. Chitta is jada. So ahankar has no power. Even ahankar cannot desire. The desire itself requires chaitanyam behind it. So that means all the functioning that is happening is of inert things. It is made active from inert by Chaitanya. However, when Chaitanya gets fused with these inert things, it happens so subtly, so much in close proximity that we are not able to see Chaitanya separately and inert things separately. We feel they are one. The uddipana, as they call, enlivenment, the uddipana of ahankara or of any action of the gunas, which is prakriti, happens in such a manner that it is happening under the auspices of Chaitanya or Purusha or Atman, is not ascertained by us. Why even talk of that? When we eat something and we like it and we feel happy, all the points of happiness that we feel in our daily life is because of the Chaitanya that we do not realize. Because we directly ascribe it to the object. Today I saw a thing and I was so happy. We feel thing made me happy. The reason is the thing cannot be seen by me as a thing unless the thing, me and seeing all are enlivened by the consciousness. That means the bhog, it is called bhog. When Chaitanya comes and resides in the inert thing, thereby enlivening the things, it is called bhog. It is so closely combined with each other that we sometimes say that it is the Purusha or the Atman who is enjoying. He doesn't enjoy. Let us take an analogy and it will be clear to us. A reflecting mirror is there. The sun's light came on the mirror. Naturally, the mirror being the clean and reflecting surface, the light from the mirror got thrown on the wall. And on the wall, there was something there, an object was there. And suddenly everybody said, look, there is an object on the wall. And then we all say that, whoa, it is the mirror which has shown us the object on the wall. The mirror by itself cannot do anything. If the light is not there, if sunlight is not there, mirror is useless because it cannot reflect the light. The light itself is not there. But in the reflected light, the object is seen on the wall. At that point of time, we feel that it is the mirror who showed us the object because we are unaware of the sun. The fact that sun's light is reflected through the mirror and thrown on the wall, and we enjoy the object on the wall, we are so convinced about the fact that it is the mirror that has shown the object on the wall that we do not even think of the sun. Similarly, in every act in our life, we forget the consciousness or the Chaitanya and give credence to the reflecting surface, which is buddhi or antakarana, and we consider antakarana as the precursor of the light, originator of the light. This particular presumption is called ego. Everyone has this reflecting surface. My reflecting surface is the origin of the light. That misconception is called ego. And that is how whenever we decide to enjoy anything on the wall as an object, it is because of nothing else but my buddhi or my reflecting surface This is called bhoga. When we realize that this is not because of the reflecting on the surface or the mirror, it is because of that sun. Otherwise, the mirror has no significance, wall has no significance, object has no significance, seeing has no significance. Then we call apavarga. Bhoga apavarga drishyam. Drushya, what you see, what you visualize, what you experience is nothing else but the reflection of the Chaitanyam in the reflecting surface called the Buddhi or the Antakarana, through which we create all that is created. And when we presume that particular reflecting surface or Buddhi as the originator, it is called Ahankara. This is the description of Bhoga. Why this is important? Because now the yogi is coming to the final stage of what is called as Sanyama on Buddhi. Now the yogi is going to do meditation on Chitta itself. Look at the funny thing. It is the Chitta which we try to focus. Now the focus itself is going to be on the Chitta. The object of meditation is Antakarana itself. It is one of the highest stage to be achieved by the yogi, because now he is very close to the Purusha Khyati. How yogi does that? What is the process of doing it? And what happens when he is successful in meditating on the Antakarana itself is the subject of discussion for the next session. Hari Om. Om Purnamad Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.
Thank you, Sanjay ji. We'll wait for some questions and request to please close the meetings, and I'll be leaving to get the kids for school.
Hari Om, Sanjay ji. Thank you for explaining all those siddhis in detail, and it has become so complex and so inquisitive to know much deeper into that, And in one way or other, many of the siddhis you have mentioned, I have at least either read or seen people experiencing it, like the hole in the what you call Brahmarandra. Yeah, that's what it is. That is still, I think everybody can observe, I think, feel it. Like, there's something called in our childhood, parents used to put this Ashtajurna, some this in powder. You immediately feel the taste in the throat, like, on the tongue, like that's still this thing is that. And you have mentioned about this, what you call, knowing everything without learning that thing. In fact, there is a child, the prodigy in Kerala, just 3 or 4 years, he's in the KG even. He has not studied Bhagavata or any Puranic, Ramayana or anything, but the Acharya still respect him because he quotes from that. Even the technology in WhatsApp, he has not seen WhatsApp, but he is explaining to that. I mean, it's really what you call practical in the sense existing. You can say that's what I have to explain. I mean, give to you in this added value. Hari Om.
Hari Om, Dr. Sanjay ji.
Hari Om.
On the definition of prana, so it's not the breath, but it's called as vital energy.
Yes. Correct.
Yeah, and the one example you mentioned about the Hanumanji, I think is it similar thing is coming in Ramayana when Angada visited to Ravana's. Yeah, it is something similar, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. It is, in fact, most of our Puranas, especially Ramayana, Mahabharata, is nothing else but the exposition of various siddhis of yogis, because most of them were yogis, however, described in Arthavada. So it looks like a very romantic story or a very exaggerated story. But if you look at each of the roots of these stories, you realize that it is nothing else but the manifestation of yoga. Hari.
Very
Hariom, Sanjay, this pratibha, you said there is no exact meaning in English, exact word for English. Pratibha, there is a, what do you call, meaning of reflection also, no?
No, Pratibha is not reflection. Intuition is the word which comes closer to that. That is how Gurudeva is also using it out of compulsion. But Pratibha is far more and wider than intuition. Intuition is like you having some kind of stimulus from inside to know certain things. Pratibha is a completely different thing. That is why in the Bhashyakara, in this particular sutra, has described it as Ushakkala. In Ushakkala, the way from the darkness of the night, when Ushakkala comes, suddenly you become aware of so many things around you. Pratibha is something like that. Yogi now gets his buddhi expands further in such a manner that as if everything around starts automatically being known to him. He doesn't have to do any efforts to know. When the Ushakkal is there, you see a tree. You don't do any effort to see a tree. You are not searching for a tree. It just comes to your eyes. You see the sky. You see the mountains. They just appear to you. You don't do any special effort. You are not inclined even to use your indriyas. It just comes in front of you. Similarly, pratibha is the level of intellect or the buddhi where things become known to you by sheer presence of that thing in the world. You don't have to do any efforts for that. That is how most of the siddhas or the yogis, when thousands of people are coming for the darshanam, like in case of Gurudeva, 100,000 people used to be there in Jnana Yajna, but while looking at them, Gurudeva would come to know what that man is thinking, what this man is thinking. Suddenly he would say one word to somebody talking about his personal issue, and people were surprised how he could know so many things at one time. Pratibha, Harihu.
This is an example. I mean, when Narendra Modi, Prime Minister, went to join. When he was young, he went to join to Ramakrishna Ashramam, and the head of the mission, they told him, no, don't come here. You go and serve the nation. Is it the reflection, the pratibha, through the pratibha, it is coming to know?
Yes, because from pratibha they come to know the level of authority or adhikara that the person has. So if there is still the chitta shuddhi is not achieved, then the guru would say that the person to get married or go away and do your normal duties and then come. But moment if they come to know that there is an adhikari purusha, Swami Vivekananda saw his disciple Swami Swarupananda and immediately said, I have got a jewel. He told Bhagini Nivedita, today I have acquired a jewel. Jewel meaning there was a ready person for salvation, for mukti. And of course, Swami Swarupananda got his mukti at the age of, as young as age of 25. So that is how through pratibha they come to know. Ramakrishna Paramahansa could read the people through and through. That is pratibha again.
Hari.
Hari.